doing? Just getting started here. What are we talking about today? Slope intercept form. All right. All right, let's get started today. Today we are going to talk about line equations. So these are going to be equations of a line. So as you can see, I've represented this line in two different ways right now. The first way is I've actually graphed the line. So this here is a graph of my line. So you can write a line as a graph. The graphs are great visuals. They give you every y point for every x point you can think of. So for every input you get an output, and you can see it here. I've also expressed this as a table, and I tried my best to get the line as best I could to the table. But this table represents this line as well. You can see that you have x values here and you have y values. X values, remember, are also called your inputs. Y values are called your outputs. Remember that sometimes y is written as f of x, meaning a function of x. And x here is your variable, so y value, x would be your input, y would be your output. Remember that everything on this side is your domain. And that is a list of all the things on this side. And over here you have your range, which is a list of all of them. So outputs are individual ones, y values individual ones, x values individual ones, inputs individual ones, domain, all of it, range, all of it, f of x and y are the same thing. Recall from the other day that we had a formula for slope. So slope is rise over run. That's one way to look at it. It's also change in y over change in, well, I guess that's this one, change in x, or y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So you do have a formula for slope. If you don't have that memorized, I highly suggest you get that memorized. It's not too difficult if you remember it's rise over run. So going up and down is first, left and right is on the bottom. So vertical movements are on top, horizontal movements are on the bottom of our division sign. And we're just comparing them through division, so it is a ratio of how high we go versus how left and right we go, or how down we go, I guess. So this was kind of what we covered Friday. I didn't give you any specific work for it today, but today we're going to take it one step further and look more in depth at slope. And the big key for today is the linear form. So for linear equations, this works for linear equations, we have different forms for them. And one form that we want to look at is called slope-intercept form. So this is going to be true for any lines. They can be written, their equation can be written in slope-intercept form, which, if you're following along on the notes, I think it's like the one page that you need to know right now, which is slide 6. In the notes, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And you need to and basically just plug these things into it and you get your equation for your line. So if you know your m and you know your b, you got your equation for your line. And they are really easy to find because, again, m is going to be your slope. So if you have 2 points, you can calculate slope using this. If you have the actual line and 1 point that you know, you can go to your next point by using rise over run. So slope is pretty easy to find. You have options on how to do it. B is your y-intercept. And this here is the value. So y-intercept, your y-intercept is your y value when x equals 0. Or another way of saying that is, where does a line cross the y-axis? That is your y-intercept. Now, what x value does it cross the y-axis? And looking at our graph here, that point is right here. It crosses the y-axis. So our intercept is 0, 0. Well, our intercept is 0. The point is 0, 0, because it's 0 on the y. So once you have those two, you just plug it into this format and you get it. Remembering y, or occasionally you see it as f of x, is your output, and x is your input. So if you can remember the format, this is really easy to get the equation for. The equation for this line is, well, y equals mx plus b, where m is going to be your slope. So in this case, we need to figure out what our slope is. We can use rise over run, because we know we have a point here, and you have a point here. And using that to get your slope, you just go up 2 over 1, so your slope is 2 on the y, 1 on that, and that reduces down to 2, so your slope is 2. Or you can use the table here, and you can use these points. We can say, hey, this point here, we're going to call point 1. Yeah, we're going to call that point 1. And this point here we'll call point 2. You could have used any points you wanted. As long as you have 2 points, it'll work. You plug into this formula. So this here would be x1, this would be y1, because they're both on point 1. This would be x2, this would be y2, because they're both on point 2. This is the x value, these are the y values. So you can go ahead and plug it into that. y2 was 2 minus 0 for the y's, and this was 1 minus 0, which brings it back to that 2 over 1, which brings it to 2. So they are the same thing. It doesn't matter which way you want to do it. However, if you're not given the actual physical graph of it, and you're only given 2 points, you're going to use this. If you're given the graph, you're probably going to use that because it's easier. But either one will work for either of them. And that gives you your slope. Then you need to find b, which is where this line crosses your y-axis. Now, if you have a graph, it might be easy to just look at it. Here, I can say b is 0 because it crosses at 0, 0. If you don't have a graph and you have a table, you might actually have, hey, where x is 0. And then you can get 0 from that. But what if you don't have that point? How can you find your y-intercept? Well, it's actually pretty simple, because again, it's when x equals 0. So that was 1, that was 2, right? So you're going to come back to your slope-intercept form, okay? And you can plug into this to get one unknown, which is b. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say, I want to know what y equals when x is 0. So y equals, my slope is 2, my x will be 0 plus b, and you can see how that's going to give you your b value, right? So if you know a point, you can plug in that point. I don't know 0 because it's gone, but I do know 1 and 2, so I know this will be 1, this would be 2. 1 times 2 is 2, so this becomes 2 plus b equals 2. Then we can subtract 2 from there, subtract 2, and you get 0 equals b. So we know our y-intercept is b. In that way, we can write our equation once we get these two. So the equation for this line, I guess I'll squeeze it in here. The equation is f of x, or you could use y, equals m, which is 2, times x, which is your input, plus b, which is 0. And that actually goes away, and it's just f of x equals 2x. There's your equation. It comes right out of this form here. So it's really simple to look at it. Yeah, you have an assignment. It's in the classroom. It's really easy if you're paying attention to what I'm doing. You're just plugging into this here. You need a formula to find slope. Plug into that. So let's say we are given, let's say we're given 2 points, and I want to know the equation of a line. So let's recall some things we know. We know that a line is defined by 2 points, or 1 point and slope. So if we have either of these, we can figure out the equation of our line. It doesn't matter, whichever one you want. So let's say we're given 2 points. Let's say we're given the points, and I'm just making them up, 6, 4, and 9, 2. Let's say our line goes through these 2 points. What is the equation of that line? Well, you know enough for that line. You can sit there and you can graph that line if you wanted, or we can just go right into the equation. We're going to go right into the equation here, and then we'll graph it from the equation so you can see how that works. But here, it's really simple to do. You got to remember slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Remember that m equals your slope, which equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And you know that b equals your y-intercept. So we're going to find our slope first. Again, just plug into this equation. It does not matter which point you choose as your first point. This is going to be point 1 because it's first, and this will be point 2 because it's second. It doesn't matter. So this here will be x1 and y1. This would be x2 and y2. And it doesn't matter which point is point 1 and which point is point 2, as long as their pair share their subscript. So make sure these are both 2 if it's 0.2. If this is 0.1, make sure these are both 1. And plug it in. So y2 is 2 minus y1, which is 4, all over x2, which is 9, minus x1, which is 6. This is going to get 2 minus 4 gives me a negative 2. 9 minus 6 gives me a 3. So I know my slope is negative 2/3. You're allowed to have a fraction. In fact, fractions are pretty nice because I know when I go to graph this, I'm going up 2 or down 2 because it's negative, and left or right 3, just making sure I have negative slope. So first off, our slope is negative here. You should note that. And then we need to find our y-intercept. So we know that y equals 2/3 negative times x plus b. Well, I need to take one of these points and plug it in to solve b. So here we're going to take point 1. It doesn't matter which one we took, but y is 4. So 2/3 times x, which is 6, plus b. That's not going to be too bad. So 2/3 times 6, again, if you're not very good with fractions, keep in mind that is negative, so our answer will be negative here. But 2/3 times 6, remember you can simplify that. You can pre-cancel, and you're going to get 4. So then you get 4 equals 4 plus b, and it just so happens that this is going to go through 0 as well, apparently. All right, that's negative, sorry. It's not going to go through 0. This does equal negative. So then here we're going to add 4 to both sides, plus 4 to both sides, and you're going to get 8 as your b value. So now we know our y-intercept. And again, this is where your graph is going to cross your y-axis. It's going to be at point 0, 8. So again, we know another point now, which is 0, 8. That's our y-intercept. And we're just going to write it in the form of y equals mx plus b. So our equation for this is y equals m, which is negative 2/3, plus b, which is 8. So there's the equation of the line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph it using this equation, right? So here I should be able to graph it because, again, here's a slope and here's a point. So I have one point and a slope. I have enough information here to graph this line. So let's go ahead and graph it. I'm just going to clear off some of this work. So I have room. But let's go ahead and graph this thing. And let's hope my graph is going to be good enough. So first off, I have a point. I know that my b value here is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and put that as my y-intercept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's right up here. So I got my 1 point. And I know my slope is negative 2/3. So keep in mind my slope is negative. So my line has to look like this. Right? This would be negative slope. This is negative slope. And remember from before, this would be positive slope. This would be 0 slope. And this would be no slope. So be aware of that. So that's just one way to double check to make sure that you're going in the right direction here. Okay, so once we get our points, we're just going to move on the y-axis 2. And again, we want it to go down because it's a negative 2. So you can either look at this as negative 2 over positive 3, or you can look at it as 2 over negative 3. Either way, it's going to work. So it doesn't matter which one you give the negative 2 as long as you're only giving it to 1. So here, if we're looking at it this way, we're going to go down 2 and over 3, which puts another point there. Now you have the 2 points and you can connect them to make your line. If you're looking at it this way, it goes up 2 and over 3, and you'll note that that point would also be in that line. So then we can go ahead and get our ruler out here, connect the dots, and you get your line. I'm a little confused when plugging in numbers for y-intercept without a graph. Alright, we'll do another one like that. In fact, I'll do a whole other problem. Just so everyone gets it. But good, we got our graph. Don't want that. Everything's in this layer. Get rid of that layer. Yeah, it takes a little practice. I'll do another example. In fact, I'm just going to jump into your homework here. So look at number 3 in your homework here. You get point A is at 2, 6, and point B is at 8, 1. Now your homework's asking you just to find the slope, but we'll find the y-intercept too. So the homework is asking for the slope, but we'll find the y-intercept. Remember, slope, or m, equals change in y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Again, it doesn't matter which one you pick as which point. Let's pick this as our first point this time. That's point 1, and this is point 2. So this would be x2, and this would be y2. This would be x1, and this would be y1. Doesn't really matter. So in that case, y2 is 6 minus y1, which is 1, all over x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is 8. Just make sure you get your order correct. This is going to equal 5 over negative 6. So we have negative 5/6 as our slope. And that does not get reduced, and that's fine. Again, that negative sign can go with the negative 5 or the negative 6 down here, but it goes out front for all intents and purposes. And this is going to equal y equals that times x plus b. Now, when you solve for b, you want to pick either this point or this point. It does not matter which point you pick, just pick one of them. Looking at that denominator, they're not going to be nice. I'm going to pick the 2, maybe. I guess either way it's going to be a little more work. But I'm going to pick this one here. So I'm going to plug in this point here. Let's pick this one here. So I'm going to plug it in. I have a y value, which is 6. I have a slope, which is 5/6. And I have an x value, which is 2. And I'm adding that to b. And now you have just one unknown. You're just going to solve for b. That's all you're going to do. You can do your algebra to solve for b. Here we're going to combine like terms first. So negative 5/6 times 2. Again, this can pre-cancel a bit. Not the greatest work, but you get negative 5/3. Yeah, that's all you're doing there. So you're back here to 6 equals negative 5/3 plus b. Then you're going to go ahead and add 5/3 to both sides, plus 5/3 plus 5/3. So 6 and 5/3 equals b. So your y-intercept is y-intercept equals 6 and 5/3, or it's going to be the point 0, 6 and 5/3, which will be a pain in the graph, but that's all you do. You pick a point to plug into it. Is 0.75. Find the slope of the line. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. Should be 3/4, which is 0.75. So yeah, and that is positive. So yeah, you can leave it as a fraction. Again, fractions are going to be nice with slope because it's rise over run. If you wanted to, I don't know if you did the actual points to it, but if you use the actual points from it, you can. Or you can just count over rise over run. I just counted over rise over run. It went over 3 on the x, and I'm sorry, it went over 4 on the x and up 3 on the y. And that's how I got 3/4. So either way, that's number 1 for you, Jay. Luke. What other kind of questions do they give you in here? Find slope. Find slope. And then 11 through 19 is going to be easy as long as you remember slope-intercept form. So like 11 through 19, 11 y equals 6x plus 3. Your slope is 7, and your y-intercept is 3. Right? Slope, y-intercept. They just come out. Do you have to do the y-intercepts for 3 through 8? You don't have to. It's just asking for slope. I could get a lot more in depth with this if I wanted to, but you're going to get a lot next year. You're going to spend half the year on linear equations. Can you do another y-intercept? Yeah, I can do another y-intercept. I can look at number 4. So number 4, again, it asks for slope and y-intercept. So point E is 1 comma negative 2, and F is 4 comma negative 8. Let's hope we get a good slope here, so we don't have to deal with ugly numbers, but we'll see. Again, y equals mx plus b is the form you're looking for to find that. So this is not standard form for a line, but it's y-intercept form, and it's probably the most useful that you see around. Everything seems to be written like this for lines, and it's really easy to use, and it's a great form because of that. Here we get slope first, so let's find our slope. Remember, slope is our m value, and that is, we'll call this point 1, and we'll call this point 2. And so this is x1, y1, x2, y2. Slope is negative 8, y2 minus y1 minus negative 2. Again, if you want to clean up your signs before you put that in, go right ahead, but watch your integer work. And change in x is 4 minus 1. So denominator 4 minus 1 is 3. That's easy to get. Negative 8 minus negative 2 is actually negative 8 plus 2. Signs are different, subtract, and you get negative 6. So your slope here is negative 6 divided by 3, which is negative 2. So your slope should be negative 2. So when you come over here, you get y equals negative 2 times x plus b. And then you're going to pick a point. It does not matter what point you pick. Picking this one might be easier because you have to multiply by 1, which is fun. Or picking this one, you'll have to multiply by 4, which whatever you can do. And then you're just going to plug it in for your inputs and outputs. So here y would be negative 2, and negative 2 times 1 plus b. And in this case, negative 2 times 1 is going to give you negative 2. So negative 2 equals negative 2 plus b. Then you're going to add 2 to this side, add 2 to this side to get b by itself. And we're solving for b. And you get 0 equals b. So your y-intercept here is 0, 0 is where it's going to cross. Any other questions on it? Pretty simple and straightforward today. And again, you should be able to graph them too if you have. You can go ahead and graph one just for the fun of it. But let's look at like 11. Y equals 7x plus 3. Right, when you go to graph things, y-intercept form makes it really simple for you, because remember, this here is your slope, and this here is your y-intercept. So our y-intercept is at positive 3, so 1, 2, 3, right there. Our slope is 7, which is 7 over 1, so that's up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over 1. And I got my 2 points. There's my ruler. And there's my line. It's that simple. Um, 11 through, it depends. Again, this is the equation for your line. It gives you the graph right here. 11 through 19, right? 11 through 19 is just asking you what the slope equals. And what is the y-intercept? And again, you just pull it right out. Slope is 7 in this case. Y-intercept is 3. Comes right out of it. That's one of the beauties of slope-intercept form. As long as it's written that way. And then you can make a table of xy values if you wanted, right? Because your domain's not restricted. If I plug in 1 for x, 1 times 7 is 7 plus 3. I know the point, was it that 1 times 7 is 7, 8, 9, 10. I know the point 1 comma 10 goes through it, and that's this point here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, this point is 1 comma 10. I know that's a point to it. If I plugged in 2, I get 14, 14, 15, 16, 17. 2 and 17 will be a point on that, and so on. If I plugged in, well, I don't want to do a half. If I plugged in 1/7, then you get 4, right? 1/7 goes through 4. Really, 1/7? I don't know. It's going to go through 4. It'll be like right here. 1/7. How would you do 12? 12, same thing. No, it's in a different layer. Twelve is y equals negative x plus 0, really. So y equals negative x plus 0. Well, it's just negative x. You don't have a b value, so your b value equals 0, so your y-intercept is 0. And then what's the number in front of x here? It's negative 1, because remember there's a 1 in front of that. So it is the same thing. And again, you can go ahead and graph that, right? Y equals negative x. You should note that slope is negative here. Wow, like half of my stuff over in there. You should note that slope is negative, so it's negative 1. It crosses this point here, and negative 1 is the same thing as negative 1 over 1. So I'm going to go down 1, right 1, up 1, left 1, and you should get that slope there. You should see each of these points. I can keep going and get all those points I want with that slope, and you can see it forming the line just there. But again, go ahead and graph it. Really easy to graph. And there it goes. But yeah, just don't lose your identity property. And if you don't have it plus or minus anything, then it's not going to have a y-intercept. And you should note that when you add or subtract something to it, like when you plus b or minus b, it just moves this line up or down your y-axis because it's just changing your y. Don't want that, don't want that. What is this? Any other questions on it? Pretty simple today. Just remember slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And remember your slope equation, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Or it's rise over run, depending on how you do it. But yeah, not too difficult, I hope. What's tomorrow looking like? Ooh, writing rules. Which is actually going to be pretty easy. Because I just showed you how to do that too. Your rule is pretty much your equation, so you're not going to be too difficult there. If you have no other questions, try your best to get it in by Friday. I am behind on science grading and stuff too. If you need time for science, take it. I know a lot of people are emailing me asking for more time on science. If you need more time on science, take it. My goal for science is to get through one more chapter after this one. And again, that's going to be determined on what's all going on with the coronavirus and everything like that. If things start getting better or if things start getting worse, who knows. But yeah, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And try to get try to get science in by the end of the week. That would be awesome. But if you can't do that, I mean, take another week and then we'll reassess it. Just be working on it. Just don't be putting it off. I mean, it is pertinent. I am going to unlock the next chapter come Monday. So come Monday, I'm hoping to give you the rest of the work you need to do for science for the year, and then you'll be, done with science when you finish that. Ideally. I mean, I can continue going for another year on science if I wanted, but you'll get more biology in high school. If you need more time, just make sure you're working on it. That's all I can tell you. I don't know how far everybody is. Everyone's at different places. Everyone's doing weird things at home right now due to this quarantine. I'm trying to be as flexible as I can with it. Just get it done when you can. If it says you need a partner or something, just ignore it, because when I originally posted the chapter, we were in school. So ignore the work with a partner if you need to. But yeah, that's the best I can ask you to do is try your best, Luke. So whenever you get it to me, you get it to me. I am a bit behind on updating grades for science. Math, I think I have pretty well updated right now. So if it says that you're missing something, it's either missing or I lost it in my email somewhere, which is a very good possibility, and you should just send it to me again until that changes. Again, if you have questions on anything, email me. If you're completely lost on something, I can set up a private kind of chat with you if you need to. Just because, I don't know, I spent 3 hours with Nora yesterday doing quadratics. So if anybody needs help, let me know and I'll try my best to get it to you. So with that, I'm going to end it. Have a good rest of your day. Just be working on things little by little, chug away at it. And if you need help, send me an email. So long.